Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the new 2025 mix of Pink Floyd live at Pompeii 1972. This is the soundtrack album to the 4K restoration that was shown in theaters in April, released today on May 2nd, 2025. 5 tracks from Pompeii were released as part of the early years 1965 to 1972 box set in 2016, but this is the first official live album released from the film, containing live performances from the film, as well as 2 additional tracks, including previously unreleased extended version of A Saucerful of Secrets. The track listing for the double CD version is as follows. You guys can see it right over here. Disc 1, Pompeii Intro. Track number 2, Echoes Part 1. Track 3, Careful What That Axe, Eugene. Track 4, A Saucerful of Secrets. Track 5, One of These Days. Track 6, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Track 7, Mademoiselle Knobs. And track 8, Echoes Part 2. On to Disc 2 here, we have an alternate take of Careful What That Axe, Eugene, and the unedited Saucerful of Secrets. Personnel on Live at Pompeii includes the classic Pink Floyd lineup of Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Richard Wright, and Nick Mason. The classic lineup was just on fire here, and the chemistry was there, before, egos divided the band. Everyone was functioning as one unit here, and I was really excited when I found out that, the footage was going to be reissued in 4K in theaters, but what I was most interested in was how the 2025 mix would compare to the original. Before I go any further, let me just say first and foremost that I am not an audiophile by any means. You guys tend to have a much better ear for these things than I do. I'm not a musician. I can only go by what I hear as a fan and what I thought stood out between the original mix and the new 2025 remaster. So with that being said, let's dive in. The audio was remixed from the original multi-track tapes by Porcupine Tree's Steven Wilson, Prague legend, also a huge Pink Floyd fan, and one of the things that stood out to me the most in comparing the 2025 mix with the original is the drums. That was definitely the most prominent for me. Nick Mason sounds phenomenal in this new mix, and in the original the cymbals are far too saturated. Everything sounds much more natural here, and although the drums might be less punchier, the cymbals have more body, instead of sounding so harsh, and dynamically, I think, Nick's drums under control allows Roger's bass, Richard Wright's organ, and David's guitar to sound much clearer and have greater quality to them in the mix, right? A lot more clarity as well. So for me, that was the biggest, thing that I noticed between the original and the new mix here, was just how much work they put into the drums here to make them sound more natural. On previous mixes, you were kind of limited to how loud you could turn it up because of how overbearing the drums were in the mix, but I think Steven Wilson did a great job here of making every element present so that the cymbals aren't so overpowering to where you couldn't turn it up past a certain level, and I definitely recommend cranking this up as loud as you can on a good pair of speakers. Everything sounds much more vibrant, and the performance really comes to life, and for me personally, I like the original. I mean, it's pretty much all we had for years, right? But it's really night and day compared to the 2025 mix and any past versions you might have heard. However, if you're into the nostalgia of the original mix, that's cool as well. I like both for different reasons. I think both versions are essential listening for any Pink Floyd fan, but I'm glad the audio from this film got an update, and I think Steven Wilson did a fantastic job here. So just wanted to share my thoughts real quick on the new 2025 mix of Pink Floyd live at Pompeii. Maybe you guys were lucky enough to see it at your local IMAX theater as well. I have my Blu-ray copy coming in the mail. Should be arriving today, but I was most interested, and I know the visuals are stunning, but I was most interested in how this would sound, and so I've given a few listens on a good pair of speakers here. It's been released on digital, on streaming, so while my copy comes in the mail, I've been listening, and definitely was able to identify a few differences between the original mix and the 2025 mix, most predominantly with the drumming here by Nick Mason. Everything sounds a lot more controlled, and, the drumming, like I said, is not as saturated, the cymbals are not as harsh, and so I really enjoyed that, but like I said before, I am not as much of an audiophile as some of you guys are, so you guys may have a better ear for these things than I do, but just going by what I observed here, I really enjoy the 2025 mix. I think it's a definite improvement from what we had. So that wraps up this brief review here of the new Pink Floyd live at Pompeii 1972 mix here by Steven Wilson from 2025. Just wanted to, share my reaction real quick. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload, and be sure to let me know down in the comment section below, did you see live at Pompeii at your local IMAX theater, and what were your thoughts on the new mix that was released today, the soundtrack that's out now? Did you order a copy? Let me know all that good stuff down in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.